My name is Danielle Carter. I'm 26 years old and I almost died on Christmas Eve while my family accused me of faking it. That night, the house was glowing with holiday lights. The table was set, the air smelled of roast turkey and cinnamon. Everyone was laughing, passing dishes, clinking glasses. I tried to smile, but every breath felt like my chest was locked in a vice. "Danielle, stop fidgeting," my mother. Michelle hissed across the table, her lipstick-perfect smile never breaking. "You're making people uncomfortable." I pressed my hand to my ribs. The stabbing pain had been building for days. "Mom." My voice cracked. "I can't breathe." My sister Tiffany rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stick. "Here we go again," she muttered loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Drama, Danielle. Can't let anyone else have the spotlight for one night." I tried to answer, but the words caught in my throat. The edges of the room blurred. When I pushed back my chair, my legs gave out. Plates crashed, glasses shattered. I collapsed on the tile, gasping. Danielle, Mom's heels clicked toward me. But instead of kneeling, instead of reaching out, she folded her arms. "Get up. This is ridiculous." "Seriously?" Tiffany's laugh was sharp. "We're in the middle of dinner. You couldn't wait to pull this stunt." Their voices seemed far away, muffled. My lungs refused to fill. I clawed at the floor, terrified. And then Justin, my brother-in-law, dropped beside me. His face was pale. "She's not pretending. She's blue. Call 911. Mom's reply was instant, furious. "Justin, don't encourage her. She's done this before." But Justin already had his phone out. "She's not breathing." "Michelle." His shout cut through the chaos. "Send an ambulance now." The last thing I saw was the paramedics bursting through the door, their voices urgent. "We've got a critical patient, get the stretcher now." And just like that, everything went black. When I was a kid, I thought every family worked this way, that pain was something you swallowed, that crying meant weakness, that being sick made you unworthy of love. My father died in a car accident when I was 6. I don't remember much about him, just the warmth of his laugh and the way he'd lift me onto his shoulders. After he was gone, our house grew quiet, then rigid. My mother, Michelle, ran it like her boutique, polished on the outside, merciless behind closed doors. "Appearances matter more than feelings," she'd say, tugging a brush through my tangled hair until my scalp burned. "Don't embarrass me." She meant it. Whenever I felt unwell, stomach aches, fevers, the endless little illnesses of childhood, her response was always the same: "You're exaggerating. Stop pretending." The first time I realized my words didn't count was at 9 years old. I had fallen off the monkey bars at school, landing on my wrist with a snap that made me scream. By the time Mom picked me up, my arm was swollen purple. In the car, I cradled it against my chest. "It really hurts, Mom. I think it's broken." She didn't even glance at me. "You wouldn't be crying this much if it were really broken. Stop the theatrics." At home, she handed me the vacuum. "We have guests coming tonight. You'll do your chores first." So I vacuumed, tears streaming down my face, while Tiffany, 2 years older, always perfect in Mom's eyes, stood in the doorway smirking. "Drama queen," she sang, rolling the word on her tongue like candy. Only after the guests left did Mom finally drive me to urgent care. The X-ray confirmed what I'd said hours earlier: a clean fracture. The doctor asked gently, "How long has it been like this?" I looked at Mom before answering. She cut in smoothly. "Oh, she just fell an hour ago. She's very sensitive." The lie settled like cement. The doctor nodded, scribbled on his clipboard, and the truth, my truth, vanished into silence. From then on, Tiffany picked up Mom's tone, repeating it like scripture. If I got the flu, she'd laugh, "Danielle's dying again." If I twisted my ankle, she'd mimic a limp until I begged her to stop. Mom never corrected her. She just tightened the rules. Don't cry, don't complain, don't make a scene. The result was simple. I stopped telling them when I hurt. At school, I learned to plaster on a smile. At home, I shrank smaller and smaller, convinced that maybe they were right. Maybe I was too dramatic. Maybe pain was something other people got to feel. But at night, alone in my room, I would curl up under the covers, clutching the aching parts of myself and whispering, "You're not pretending. You're real. You know your body." It was the only place I allowed myself to believe it. By the time I hit high school, I had mastered silence. If I felt dizzy during gym, I pushed harder. If I had migraines so sharp they blurred my vision, I locked myself in the bathroom until they passed. At home, weakness was ammunition, and Tiffany never missed a chance to fire. Mom Danielle says she's sick again. She'd tattle with a smirk. Should I call the paramedics? They would both laugh like it was the funniest joke in the world. I counted the days until graduation, convinced freedom was somewhere beyond our front door. When I finally left for college in Dallas, it was like stepping into sunlight after years in a locked attic. My roommate Hannah noticed things instantly, the way I winced climbing stairs, the way I rubbed my temples when the migraines hit. One night she found me curled on the dorm floor, clutching my stomach. "Oh my God, Danielle, are you okay?" I braced for the familiar ridicule. "I'll be fine. It's not a big deal." She shook her head. "Not a big deal? You're pale. We're going to the campus clinic." The words stunned me. "We're going. Not stop pretending. Not you're exaggerating." She believed me. At the clinic, the nurse confirmed what I'd suspected: a stomach ulcer from years of stress. Simple medical fact. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was sick. And someone took it seriously. That night, Hannah bought me ginger tea and sat cross-legged on my bed. "You have to stop minimizing everything," she said. "Your pain is real. You matter." It was the first time anyone had said those words aloud. They cracked something open in me, a part of myself I'd buried long ago. College became a period of slow repair. I studied business, joined a photography club, worked part-time in a cafe. For the first time, I had friends who noticed when I wasn't okay and cared enough to ask. But the ghosts of home still followed me. On breaks when I visited Orlando, it was as if nothing had changed. Mom would eye me critically. "You've gained weight. Don't tell me you're eating cafeteria food." Tiffany would scoff at my stories. "So dramatic, Danielle. You probably fainted on purpose so your roommate would pity you." I'd laugh it off, but inside the old doubt returned. If my own family refused to believe me, maybe my friends were just being nice. Still, I clung to the truth I'd learned at college: not everyone dismissed me. Pain didn't make me weak. And leaving Orlando after each visit always felt like escape. By the time I graduated at 22, I had built a fragile sense of self-worth. I found a marketing job in Miami and moved into an apartment with Hannah. Life was finally mine, independent, steady. I thought I had outrun the past. What I didn't know was that the lessons of silence and doubt would come roaring back when I lost everything: my job, my savings, and had no choice but to return to the very house where I'd once learned not to trust my own body. At 25, I thought I had it figured out. A steady marketing job in Miami, a tiny but bright apartment, late-night talks with Hannah that felt like family. For the first time, I was living, not just surviving. Then the company downsized. In one meeting, my position vanished along with my paycheck. The savings I'd built drained in months: rent, bills, groceries. By October, I had no choice but to pack my life into boxes and drive back to Orlando. Back to them. The house looked the same, but stepping inside felt like slipping into an old, suffocating costume. Mom greeted me with an air kiss, her eyes scanning my suitcase. "Don't tell me you're moving in permanently. You're too old to freeload." "It's just temporary," I murmured. Tiffany appeared behind her heels, clicking on the hardwood. Her smile was sweet as poison. "Of course it's temporary. Danielle has always been a guest star in this house." I bit my tongue. I needed a roof. I needed time. Within a week, Mom found a way to tether me. "Since you're here, you'll take charge of Christmas. Guests expect everything perfect, and Tiffany has work." Work. Tiffany's new boutique job gave her endless excuses to avoid responsibility, so the burden fell on me. I spent December running errands, stringing lights, ironing linens until my back screamed. At night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I felt the familiar ache in my ribs flare again. Breathing grew tight. Some mornings I woke drenched in sweat, my heart racing. "Mom, I don't feel right," I said once, careful testing the waters. She didn't look up from her laptop. "Of course you don't. You never do. You're not backing out of Christmas." So I kept going. Shopping lists, menus, decorations, every detail had to impress her friends. Tiffany breezed in occasionally, offering critiques like a boss reviewing an intern. "These ribbons are crooked. The dessert table looks sad. You're trying too hard, Danielle." Each jab chipped at me, but I swallowed it. Just survive December, I told myself. Once I found work, I could leave again. But my body wasn't listening. The tightness in my chest worsened. Sometimes I had to sit down dizzy while wrapping gifts. At night, Hannah's voice echoed in my head. "Your pain is real. You matter." Yet here, in this house, that truth melted away. Christmas Eve arrived in a storm of polished silverware, candles, and carols humming through speakers. The house sparkled. I looked like a ghost. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed pale skin, hollow eyes, lips dry from shallow breaths. I considered calling Hannah, begging her to drive up. But what would I say? Come rescue me from my own family? It sounded childish, so I powdered my face, forced on a red dress, and walked to the dining room. The table was perfect, just like Mom demanded. Guests praised Tiffany's efforts, unaware I had bled myself dry for weeks. I sat at the corner, silent, a pressure ballooning inside my chest. It was that night, during the laughter, the toasts, the clinking of wine glasses, that my body finally betrayed me. The moment everything unraveled. When I opened my eyes, the world was white, sterile. A steady beep, beep, echoed from a monitor at my side. Hospital. A nurse noticed I was awake and hurried over. "Don't try to sit up yet. You stopped breathing on arrival. We had to stabilize you." Her words sank slowly like stones. Stopped breathing. I wasn't crazy. Something real had happened. But before relief could settle, the door burst open. Mom swept in, Tiffany at her heels. Their expressions weren't relief, weren't fear. They looked annoyed. Danielle, Mom sighed like she'd caught me sneaking in past curfew. "Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" I blinked, throat raw. I couldn't breathe. They said "You embarrassed us," Tiffany snapped. Her arms were crossed, nails gleaming under fluorescent light. Guests were whispering, saying you pulled some stunt for attention. Christmas was ruined. I stared at her, waiting for a crack, a hint that she was joking. But her face was stone. The nurse cleared her throat. "Excuse me, but she suffered a severe asthma attack, possibly pneumonia. We're running more tests." This wasn't for attention. She nearly died. Mom's lips tightened. She always finds a way to make things bigger than they are. She turned to the nurse. "How soon can she be discharged?" "We have family brunch tomorrow." I felt like the air had been punched out of me all over again. Even with medical proof, even after almost dying, they still didn't believe me. When the nurse left, Tiffany leaned closer, her voice sugar-coated but sharp. "Next time, Danielle, try not to ruin the holiday. Some of us actually matter in that house." Justin appeared then, standing awkwardly in the doorway. His eyes were kind, guilty. "Danielle, don't listen. I saw you. You weren't faking." For a moment, I clung to his words like a lifeline. Someone else had seen the truth. But Mom snapped at him. "Justin, that's enough. Don't encourage her." Silence hung heavy after they left, the door clicking shut. I lay there staring at the ceiling, a foe tugging at my arm, heart hammering. They would never see me, never believe me. The thought was colder than the hospital air. That night, while the machines hummed beside me, I realized something had shifted. Their disbelief wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous. Because if I kept relying on them, one day I wouldn't wake up at all. I was discharged 2 days later, weaker but alive. Mom didn't pick me up. Justin did. He carried my bag silently, his jaw tight. When we reached the house, the smell of cinnamon and pine still lingered. Christmas was over, but its glittering shell remained like nothing had happened. Mom was at the dining table, flipping through a magazine. Tiffany scrolled her phone nearby. Neither looked up. I cleared my throat. The doctor said I need rest. I can't keep doing all the chores. Mom turned a page. Then maybe don't dramatize everything. You're fine. The heat rose in my chest, not sickness this time, but fury. For 25 years I had swallowed their disbelief, bent myself small, prayed for scraps of kindness. But lying in that hospital bed, I realized surviving them was killing me. I placed the hospital bracelet on the table in front of her. The plastic tag glared under the light, my name printed in black ink. This says otherwise. I stopped breathing. That's not drama. That's real. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go again. Always the victim. No, I said, my voice steady for once. Not anymore. I'm done letting you decide what's real. I'm done begging you to care. Mom finally looked up, irritation flashing in her eyes. Don't be ridiculous. Family is family. You can't just walk away. I met her gaze, calm in a way that scared even me. Watch me. Silence spread across the room. Tiffany scoffed, but Justin shifted uneasily, eyes flickering with something like respect. That night, I packed quietly. No ceremony, no goodbyes. Just folded clothes, zipped bags, and a heart that felt bruised, but resolute. Before dawn, I wheeled my suitcase out the front door. The cold air hit my lungs sharp and clean, as if the world itself exhaled with me. I didn't know exactly where I was going, maybe back to Miami, maybe to Hannah's couch. But I knew where I wasn't staying. For the first time, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like survival. And this time, I wasn't coming back. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't scream or cry. I simply walked away, suitcase rolling behind me like a shadow I was finally allowed to release. Hannah opened her apartment door in Miami with wide eyes and outstretched arms. "You look like hell," she whispered, then pulled me into a hug so tight I nearly collapsed. For the first time in weeks, I let myself sob. Not the quiet, hidden tears I'd mastered as a child, but heavy, shaking cries that racked my chest. Hannah didn't flinch. She held me until the storm passed. Recovery was slow. My lungs needed time, and so did my heart. There were days I woke in panic, certain I'd hear Tiffany's sneer or Mom's clipped voice. But instead, there was Hannah making tea, or Justin's texts checking in quietly. Apologies he couldn't quite say out loud, but I understood anyway. I found small jobs at first, freelance projects, tutoring sessions, anything to rebuild a sense of worth outside their house. Each paycheck, no matter how small, felt like proof I could survive without them. Therapy came next. It wasn't easy, peeling back years of dismissal, learning to say my pain matters without waiting for permission. But piece by piece, I stitched myself back together. One evening, sitting on Hannah's balcony, I watched the Miami skyline glow against the ocean. She passed me a mug of tea and said, "You know, family doesn't always mean blood. Sometimes it's the ones who stay when things break." Her words settled into me like warmth spreading through chilled skin. She was right. I used to think surviving meant enduring my parents, shrinking myself to fit their version of me. But survival had a different shape now, choosing spaces where my breath came easy, where my truth wasn't a burden, but a bond. By the next Christmas, I didn't return to Orlando. Instead, I hosted a small dinner in Hannah's apartment. We cooked clumsily, laughed at burnt cookies, drank cheap wine. It wasn't lavish or perfect, but it was real. Looking around the table, Hannah grinning, a couple of friends sharing stories, even Justin calling in over video chat, I felt something I'd never felt at home: belonging. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I wasn't the burden. I was simply me. And that was enough. 5 years later, December still carries a weight. The sight of twinkling lights, the smell of cinnamon, sometimes they stir old ghosts. But I don't run from them anymore. This year I spent Christmas morning walking along the beach. The ocean stretched endless, and bright waves folding and unfolding like pages I finally learned to turn. Behind me waited a home I built myself, small, sunlit, filled with books, plants, and people who chose me, not out of obligation, but out of love. Hannah still teased me like a sister. Justin visited when he could, and slowly I learned to let others in too. Mom and Tiffany. We haven't spoken in years. Sometimes a part of me aches at that silence, but then I remember, silence is kinder than their denial ever was. For so long I believed family was something fixed, unchangeable, a debt I had to keep paying no matter the cost. But survival taught me something else. Family can be redefined. It can be chosen. When I left that house, I thought I was walking away from everything. Now I know I was walking toward myself. And this life, fragile and imperfect as it is, finally feels like mine. That's my story. I spent years begging for love in a house that only gave me doubt. I almost lost my life before I realized I didn't need their belief to make my pain real. What I needed was to believe myself. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family or been told your feelings don't matter, I hope my journey shows you this. You can step away. You can build a new circle, a new family, and a new self that isn't defined by their denial. And if you're still in the middle of it, still fighting to be seen, please know you're not alone. Thank you for listening, for sharing this time with me. If this story touched you, hit the like button, subscribe for more, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your own story, whether of surviving, rebuilding, or still searching for your voice. Because sometimes telling it out loud is the first step to healing. And maybe we can remind each other our truth matters. Always.
My name is Rose Harrison, and I'm 29 years old. For the longest time, I thought I understood what stability looked like, what love felt like. 2 years of shared coffee mugs framed hiking photos and the rhythm of routines. I believed those little details were proof of a future. But that morning, all it took was one notification ping to crack the entire stage set of my life. It was Tuesday, a day like countless others before it. Steam curled out from under the bathroom door, carrying the warm scent of Lucas's coconut shampoo. His voice rang out above the running water, completely off key, as he belted some pop song. The sound should have been comforting, familiar. Instead, it became the last naive soundtrack to the life I thought I had. I was standing in the kitchen, waiting for the coffee pot to finish dripping, scrolling headlines on my phone, half listening for my turn in the shower. On the table sat our old MacBook open from the night before. A soft ping cut through the stillness. I glanced up without thinking. A notification bubble slid into the corner of the screen. Instagram DM reply from Jason.vsg. My breath didn't catch. My heart didn't race. Instead, everything inside me just stalled, like a skipped beat that never resumed. The name meant nothing to me. But the message preview, a string of hard eye emojis followed by, "That night was legendary. When are you coming back?" wasn't written to a stranger. Lucas had been in Vegas last weekend. A boys' trip, he'd said, with his college buddies. He'd come back yawning, claiming he was too tired from the flight to do anything except order Thai takeout and binge Netflix. We'd eaten pad Thai on the couch. I remembered how he'd kiss my forehead before falling asleep. But this message didn't belong in that version of events. I told myself it was nothing. A joke. Maybe one of his friends playing around. Maybe a group photo comment. Curiosity, that fatal flaw, pushed me closer. His Instagram was already open. He hadn't logged out after checking something last night. My finger hovered over the trackpad, shaking with an invisible weight. A silent war played out in my head, trust against dread. And then, click, the DM thread opened like a wound. The first photo slammed into me. Lucas's flushed face, his arm wrapped around a woman with slicked hair and a skin-tight dress. His hand rested low on her hip, far too low for comfort. The caption, typed by Lucas himself, said, "Still thinking about my favorite Vegas souvenir." Her reply, a fire emoji. Then, "You were the souvenir, baby. When are you coming back?" My stomach flipped. Then I saw the message from the night before while he was on the couch beside me, yawning about jet lag. He'd typed, "Soon, I hope. This place is so boring now. I already miss the excitement." That single word, boring, lodged itself into my chest like a shard of glass. Boring. Was that what I'd become to him? The woman who made him coffee in the mornings, who helped plan budgets, who thought routine was another word for home. I scrolled further, numb fingers pulling back the curtain. A short, blurry video, Lucas and the woman pressed together, swaying under neon lights. His hands roamed her body without hesitation. A message from him. "Think your girlfriend would mind if I stole you for good?" Her reply, a single winking emoji. It was small, simple, but it was an answer. I sat there utterly still, my pulse strangely steady. Rage didn't come, neither did tears. Instead, a cold, detached clarity seeped into my veins like ice water. The kitchen around me blurred into props on a stage, the hiking photo on the wall, the throw blanket I'd chosen for the couch, the matching mugs waiting for coffee. The sound of the shower shut off. Silence. Then the squeak of the bathroom knob turning. In a few seconds, Lucas would walk out wrapped in a towel, hair damp, smiling like nothing had happened. He would ask if we had half and half for the coffee, and I would have to find a way to speak to hold my body upright when the foundation of everything I believed in had already collapsed beneath me. I poured a mug of coffee I knew I wouldn't drink. Steam curled upward like the ghost of the morning we were supposed to have. The door opened. Lucas emerged humming a towel slung low on his hips. His smile was so clean, so easy, that for one horrifying second, I almost believed I'd imagined everything. God, that shower felt amazing, he said, patting across the floor. Is there coffee? I didn't hand him the mug. My hand remained still on the counter. I watched him pour his own, watched his casual glance around the kitchen, and felt the silence stretch between us like a blade. His brow furrowed. You okay? You're awfully quiet this morning. I inhaled slowly. My voice, when it came out, was steady, flat, unrecognizable even to myself. How was Vegas, Lucas? I asked. Really? He froze for the faintest fraction of a second before forcing a laugh. I told you it was fun. Club shows the usual. You know how it is. He sipped his coffee, avoiding my gaze. Why? My hand moved almost of its own accord. I turned the laptop toward him, the incriminating photo glaring up at us. His arm around her waist. His smirk. His words. It looks like fun, I said evenly. Who's Jason? The mug slipped from his hand, clacking against the counter as coffee sloshed over the edge. His face drained of color. And in that moment, the morning ended. The stage lights dimmed. The play was over. For a split second, Lucas just stared at the screen, his jaw slack, his knuckles pale around the coffee mug. Then, almost like flipping a switch, shock hardened into anger. You went through my messages! His voice cracked, the morning calm sharp and accusing. Rose, are you kidding me? That's a complete violation of my privacy. The hypocrisy was so outrageous it almost pierced through my icy calm. Almost. Your privacy, I repeated quietly, my eyes never leaving his. These aren't diary entries, Lucas. These are public photos, public comments. Sarah posted half of them in an album. It wasn't hard to find. He flinched, his gaze darting to the laptop again before snapping back to me. His anger faltered, replaced by panic. I could see his mind scrambling for a foothold, a way to spin this into something less damning. Okay, look. His voice softened, suddenly. Pleading, like a salesman changing tactics. He tightened the towel around his waist and stepped closer. It was one night, all right, just the last night in Vegas. We were drunk. It just happened. It didn't mean anything. I said nothing. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Lucas's eyes flickered with desperation. He mistook my quiet for weakening. It's Vegas, babe, he said quickly, almost tripping over his words. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? That's the rule. It was stupid, I know. But I came home to you, didn't I? Doesn't that mean something? He was just exciting, different. You've been so... He stopped himself too late. So what? My voice was low, steady. He swallowed, guilt and arrogance warring across his face. You've been so boring lately, he admitted finally. Always talking about budgets, schedules, planning every detail. I just needed, a break. Some fun. That word again, boring, like a knife twisting in a wound I hadn't even realized I carried. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was absolute clarity. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just lie. He saw me as a placeholder, safe, predictable, useful, until something exciting came along. I set my untouched mug down on the counter with deliberate care. The sound of ceramic against granite was small, but final, like a gavel hitting wood. You should go stay at your brother's for a few days, I said evenly. His head jerked back as if I'd slapped him. What, Rose, are you seriously breaking up with me over this? Breaking up. My voice remained calm. Too calm. I'm ending something that already died the moment you chose her. The only question is whether you walk out on your own or if I have to throw your things into the hallway. His indignation flared hot again. Oh, come on. It was a mistake. 3 years together and you're just going to throw it away over one mistake. Stop calling it a mistake. My words cut clean sharper than shouting ever could. A mistake is spilling coffee. A mistake is missing an exit on the highway. What you did was a choice. You didn't stumble and fall into someone else's bed, Lucas. You pursued her. You sent messages. You came home and lied to my face. That's not a mistake, it's a decision. Repeated ones. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I walked toward the bedroom, my footsteps measured, deliberate. He followed, towel clinging loosely around him, his voice rising again. Rose, wait, you're overreacting. We can fix this. Please, don't do something you'll regret. I stopped at the bedroom doorway and turned back. For the first time since the DM notification had appeared, I looked him fully in the eyes. I let him see it, the absence of rage, the absence of forgiveness. Just distance. Cold, unbridgeable distance. The only thing I regret, I said softly, is not seeing you clearly sooner. His face crumpled, his mouth opening to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I stepped into the bedroom and shut the door. Not a slam, not a dramatic gesture, just a soft, definitive click. On the other side of the wood, silence stretched. Then came a muffled sob of fury, followed by the violent crash of ceramic exploding against the wall. Coffee sprayed. Shards scattered. I didn't flinch. I walked to the dresser, pulled out jeans and a clean shirt, and set them on the bed. The sound of the front door slamming shook the apartment, vibrating faintly through the floorboards. And just like that, he was gone. The quiet that followed was almost sacred. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting motionless in my lap. The numbness was still there, wrapping me like a protective shell, but underneath it, a new clarity stirred, an engine humming to life. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for scraps. I wasn't even going to rage. I was going to remove him from my life with the precision of a surgeon cutting out rot. By the time I stood, the decision was already solid in my chest. Lucas had made his choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. The silence after Lucas stormed out wasn't peaceful. Not yet. It was jagged, broken at the edges by the image of that mug shattering against the wall. Brown streaks of coffee ran down the white paint in crooked lines, fragments of ceramic scattered across the tile. It looked like a crime scene. A crime had been committed, just not against the wall. I stood in the doorway, staring at the mess, feeling nothing. Not sadness, not rage, just absence. The same kind of blank numbness that comes after a sudden car crash when your body hasn't caught up to what happened. My first instinct was to clean it to restore order, but then I stopped. Why should I? The wall wasn't mine to scrub anymore. Neither was the chaos he'd left behind. Instead, I turned toward the bedroom. The closet smelled faintly of him, his cologne, his laundry detergent. I pulled open the sliding door and looked at the neat rows of shirts and jackets we'd once shared space for. Half of them were his. Without a second thought, I fetched a stack of flattened cardboard boxes from the storage locker we kept in the hallway. We'd save them for moving someday. I laughed under my breath at the irony. That someday had arrived, just not the way either of us imagined. One by one, I folded the boxes open, taping the bottoms shut with sharp, ripping sounds that echoed in the still apartment. And then I began. Lucas's clothes went first. Sweaters folded, jeans stacked. His black leather jacket, the one he wore on our first date, laid carefully in the bottom of the box. My hands moved like they belonged to someone else, detached and efficient. Next came his shoes, lined up neatly soles to soles, his sneakers still dusted with sand from the Vegas trip. My stomach twisted, but I didn't let myself stop. The bathroom was next. His razor, his deodorant, his half-empty bottle of cologne, all swept into a box. The scent clung to my fingers. I washed them twice, but it didn't fade. In the kitchen, I cleared his brand of protein powder from the cupboard. The hot sauces he claimed I never used enough of the whiskey bottle he saved for guys' nights. Each item was placed carefully, deliberately. There was no satisfaction, no revenge, just the cold rhythm of removal. By mid-afternoon, the apartment was littered with sealed boxes stacked by the door. 6 in total. His entire life with me, reduced to cardboard and tape. The apartment already looked different, emptier, stripped down like a stage after the play ended, and the set pieces were wheeled away. Our framed hiking photo came last, the one we'd taken on a trail in Yosemite, both of us grinning with dirt on our faces. I slid it into the final box, face down. That was the moment the numbness cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but it was enough for something sharp to slip through. I sank onto the couch, staring at the empty space on the wall where the photo had hung. How many mornings had I sat right here sipping coffee, believing in us, believing in him? I pressed my palms hard against my eyes, but no tears came. The ocean of grief was there. I could feel it vast, heavy, but it was sealed under ice. For now, the ice was holding. When I finally moved again, it wasn't toward the past. It was toward logistics. I opened the laptop, the same laptop that had betrayed him to me, and began cutting ties. Streaming accounts password changed. Shared bills accounts split. Rent. I transferred my half for the month with a note to the landlord. Then I added one more line: I'll be vacating. The cursor blinked, daring me to erase it. I didn't. I pulled up a listing site, scrolling through apartments until one caught my eye. A furnished studio available immediately. It was small and personal, sterile. Exactly what I needed. The virtual tour showed white walls, a narrow bed, a desk by the window. No personality, no history, just space. I sent a deposit within 10 minutes. By evening, my plan was set. I walked through the apartment one last time, surveying the stripped shelves, the cleared counters. The air felt thinner somehow, as if Lucas's absence had already changed the oxygen. The kitchen wall still bore the brown streaks from the shattered mug. The shards glinted under the overhead light like tiny mirrors reflecting back the wreckage. I left them there, let him clean his own destruction. That night I slept on the couch. The bedroom felt contaminated, too full of memories I wasn't ready to breathe in. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The numbness cocooned me, keeping the worst of the pain at bay. But I could sense it waiting like a dark tide pressing against the ice. It would come eventually. For now, though, there was only one thought echoing through my mind. Lucas made his choice, and I'm making mine. The apartment felt hollow the next morning. 6 sealed boxes stood like tombstones by the door waiting for him. I made coffee, though I didn't drink it. The steam curled upward, a ritual ghost of normalcy. My phone buzzed. Lucas, 9:17 a.m. Are you serious right now? Kicking me out over one mistake? This is insane. I stared at the screen expressionless. He expected me to respond, to argue, to fight. Fighting was still engagement. Fighting meant I still cared. I set the phone down without replying. An hour later, another buzz. Lucas, 10:22 a.m. Fine. If you want to act immature, go ahead. But I'm not apologizing for something that didn't even matter. Not matter. The words were absurd. The images on the laptop, the fire emojis, the kiss-faced replies, they mattered enough to fracture everything. He was rewriting the script, trying to cast himself as careless instead of cruel. By afternoon, the tone shifted. Lucas, 2:48 p.m. Look, I'm sorry. Okay, I lost control for one night. Please, Rose, let's talk about this. I held the phone, rereading the line. Not because it softened me, it didn't, but because I recognized the pattern. Denial, then anger, then bargaining. He was moving through stages of grief for something he hadn't even valued enough to protect. The messages kept coming. Lucas, 6:11 p.m. Can we start over? I love you. You know I love you. Don't throw everything away. Lucas, 11:32 p.m. Please answer me. I can't sleep. I need you. Each vibration of the phone was a test, a trap. He wanted proof he still had access to me, that I would still rush to soothe him even after he'd called me boring and thrown me aside. I didn't answer. For 2 days, the flood continued. Anger, guilt, sweet talking, then rage again. He cycled through emotions like a gambler swapping slot machines, hoping one would hit the jackpot. On the 3rd morning, I blocked his number. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was clean. A silence that belonged to me. I moved into the studio apartment that afternoon. My belongings filled the narrow space quickly. Books on the shelf, clothes in the dresser, a single potted plant by the window. The bedspread was scratchy, the lighting too bright, but the air was mine. That first night, I lay in bed listening to the faint traffic outside. No humming in the shower, no clinking mugs in the kitchen, no half-heard phone calls about Vegas, just quiet. The ocean of grief still pressed beneath the ice. I could feel it waiting, but I also felt something else: strength. A strange, steadying power in knowing I hadn't broken. A few days later, my best friend Marina came over with Thai takeout. We sat cross-legged on the floor cartons spread between us. She studied my new space, her expression unreadable. It's small, she said, finally offering a faint smile, but it feels like you. I exhaled, realizing how much I'd been bracing for judgment. It's temporary, I told her. A reset. She reached over, squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. But, Rose, be careful. Men like Lucas don't crumble when you leave them. They scheme. They circle back. Her words lingered long after she left. I knew she was right. Lucas wasn't the type to vanish into regret. He was the type to test every lock on the door until one clicked open. And I had to be ready for when he tried. That night I dreamed of the DM thread again. The blurred video, the emojis, his hand on someone else's waist. I woke up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, and sat upright in the sterile little room. For a moment I wondered if I'd overreacted, if maybe I should have given him another chance. Then I remembered the word, boring. It echoed in my mind like a bell tolling in a hollow church. That was how he saw me. That was why he strayed. Not because of weakness, but because he didn't value me. No, I hadn't overreacted. I had finally reacted. I got out of bed, poured myself a glass of water, and looked out the window at the city lights. They shimmered, scattered and distant like 100 tiny futures waiting to be chosen. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Lucas could text, he could beg, he could rage. But my silence would be louder than all of it. It had been 6 weeks since I blocked Lucas's number. 6 weeks of silence that at first felt unnatural, like missing a background noise you'd grown used to. But slowly it became a comfort. The quiet of my studio wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. I'd filled my days with routine gym in the mornings, work from the coffee shop down the street evenings with books, or long calls to Marina. The ache was still there, sometimes sharp as a bruise when I least expected it, but it no longer defined me. Then one night, sitting across from Marina at a dimly lit bar, I heard the news. She leaned in, lowering her voice, though no one around us cared. You're not going to believe this. Actually, no, you will. I raised an eyebrow. What? It's Lucas. She paused, savoring the irony. Remember that girl from Vegas, the one in the photos? The name alone was enough to make my stomach tighten. I nodded slowly. Well, Marina said, sipping her drink. Apparently he convinced her to quit her job. Told her she was too vibrant, too free-spirited to waste time in an office. He promised her a life full of excitement and adventure. I laughed once, low and humorless. Let me guess he didn't actually have a plan. Bingo. Marina's eyes glinted. She moved into his apartment, except it wasn't just his. It was a dump he shared with 2 other guys. And Lucas no steady income. Credit card debt up to his ears. They spent nights clubbing, drinking, burning money he didn't have. Within 3 weeks, it all crashed. I pictured it Lucas pacing the floor, jealousy simmering, when she so much as smiled at another guy. The fun turning sour. Marina leaned closer. He started yelling at her for dancing with other people, picking fights in clubs, possessive, paranoid. And then he just left. Packed a bag while she was out, changed the locks, blocked her number. She came home to find herself stranded. No job, no money, no place to stay. I felt my lips press into a thin line. Her voice softened. Her sister had to wire her cash for a motel until she could book a flight home. Total humiliation. I sat back, letting the story settle. There it was, the inevitable collapse. Lucas had traded stability for fireworks, and fireworks always burned out fast. But what struck me wasn't joy. It wasn't even vindication. It was confirmation. He hadn't betrayed me for something better. He'd leapt toward a fantasy and landed on jagged rocks. The life I'd built with him wasn't boring, it was solid. He just hadn't known how to value solid. Marina studied me carefully. So, how does it feel hearing all this? I swirled the ice into my glass, listening to it clink. Like watching a storm hit a town I don't live in anymore. She blinked, then smiled faintly. That's actually perfect. I shrugged. His consequences are his. They don't belong to me. But later that night, lying in bed, I couldn't help imagining her face, the woman from the blurry video. Did she feel the same punch of betrayal I had? Did she wonder how she'd been so foolish to trust him? Did she hear the word boring, tossed like a knife when he wanted to cut her down? For a flicker of a moment, I felt pity. Then I remembered her wink emoji, the way she'd affirmed his betrayal. She'd chosen him knowing he belonged to someone else. And in that choice, she'd tied herself to his downfall. I rolled onto my side, staring at the shadows across the wall. Pity was a luxury I couldn't afford. A few days later, Marina texted me again. Marina, 11:02 p.m. Guess who's back in town? Saw Lucas at the grocery store. Looked rough. Like, really rough. I didn't reply. But I thought about it. Lucas wandering aisles under fluorescent lights, his charm faded, his plans unraveled. Maybe he bought instant ramen, maybe a cheap six-pack. Maybe he thought of me when he reached for the mug aisle and remembered the one he'd shattered. None of it mattered. I wasn't his audience anymore. The life he'd wanted, fast, thrilling, reckless, had turned on him. And the life I was building, quiet, deliberate, steady, was finally mine. For the first time since Vegas, I fell asleep smiling. Not because he'd fallen, but because I'd walked away before the fire reached me. The first attempt came late at night, weeks after Marina told me about his collapse. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, an unfamiliar number. Unknown number 10. 14 p.m. Rose, it's me. I'm so sorry. I made the biggest mistake of my life. She was a disaster. You were right about everything. Please, can we just talk? I stared at the screen in the dark. My apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. The words didn't sting the way they once would have. They just looked small. I deleted the message without replying. The next evening, another number. Unknown number 8, 37 p.m. Please, Rose, don't ignore me. I know I hurt you. But I can change. I've changed. You're the only one who ever really loved me. I watched the 3 dots appear vanish, then reappear. His desperation bled through every character. For years, I would have folded at words like those would have bent myself backward to prove him right, to prove myself enough. Now the silence was easier. I let the phone go dark. By the end of the week, he had tried 3 different numbers. Each time the messages grew more frantic. Apologies, declarations, threats, disguised as pleas. Unknown number 12, 01 a.m. If you don't answer me, I'll show up at your place. We need to talk. That one made my pulse quicken. He didn't know where I lived, at least I didn't think he did. I blocked the number anyway. For a few days, nothing. Then the next wave arrived. This time it wasn't from him. Jessica, 6:42 p.m. Lucas's sister. I hesitated before answering, then swiped. Hello. Her voice was clipped accusing from the first breath. Rose. I don't know what happened between you two, but Lucas is wrecked. He's been through hell. The decent thing would be to at least hear him out. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Jessica, I said evenly. What happened between your brother and me isn't your business. You don't understand, she pressed. He's sorry. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Don't you think you're being a little cold? Cold. The word slid under my skin, not because it was wrong, but because it was finally accurate. My voice stayed calm. Jessica, your brother's choices are not my responsibility anymore. Please don't call me again. Before she could argue, I ended the call. Blocked her too. The silence that followed was heavier than the others had been. Not because I doubted myself, but because I realized something vital. Lucas wasn't just trying to reach me. He was recruiting allies, pulling strings, sending out flying monkeys to soften me. Marina had been right. He wasn't going to crumble. He was going to scheme. That night, I locked my apartment door and checked it twice. The next week passed without incident. I went to the gym I worked. I slept. The rhythm felt safe again. Until Saturday. I was at my favorite coffee shop, headphones, and typing away on my laptop. The late afternoon sun slanted through the window, warm against my shoulders. The smell of roasted beans and cinnamon was thick in the air. A shadow fell across my table. I looked up and there he was. Lucas. For a heartbeat, my chest went hollow. He looked diminished. His once polished hair was unkempt. His shirt-wrinkled eyes ringed with dark circles. The swagger that used to fill every room he entered had drained out of him. Rose, he said softly, voice trembling. Hi. I pulled my headphones out slowly, my face composed, unreadable. Lucas. His lips quirked into a hopeful smile that didn't reach his eyes. Can I sit? I didn't answer right away. I gave the faintest nod. He sank into the chair opposite me, folding his hands like a nervous interviewee. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the cafe seemed to close in around us, muffled and distant. I miss you, he said finally. His voice cracked. I miss us. What I did was unforgivable, I know, but I've been punishing myself every day. That woman, it was nothing. She was nothing. You were everything. You are everything. I stared at him across the table, my expression steady. I said nothing. He leaned forward, desperation bleeding through his tone. Please, Rose, just give me one more chance. I've lost everything. My job, my apartment, my dignity. You're the only good thing I ever had. Don't let me ruin this. I let the silence hang heavy as lead. His eyes flickered with the first spark of frustration. Are you just going to sit there after everything we shared? After 3 years? I'm pouring my heart out, and you can't even look at me. Finally, I spoke, My voice was low, even. You didn't lose me because of a mistake, Lucas. You lost me because of choices, a series of them. He blinked, stunned, as if the clarity of my words had pierced through his rehearsed lines. What happened in Vegas didn't stay in Vegas, I continued. It came home with you, into our kitchen, into our bed, into every lie you told. That's where you lost me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I closed my laptop gently, the soft click final as a coffin lid. You asked me to be happy for your happiness with her. So I removed myself. And in doing that, I found mine. Tears welled in his eyes. His lips trembled. Please, Rose, don't do this. Don't walk away. But I was already standing. I slid my bag over my shoulder, my voice steady and calm. I already did. And then I walked past him, the bell above the coffee shop door jingling as sunlight spilled across my face. I could feel his eyes on my back as I walked toward the door, each step cutting the tether that once bound us. The cafe bell jingled as I pushed through sunlight spilling across my face. Rose. His voice cracked behind me, desperate louder now. The chatter in the cafe dipped for a moment. I froze mid-step, then turned slowly. He was on his feet, eyes wet, trembling like a man pleading at an altar. For the first time, I saw him not as Lucas, my boyfriend of 3 years, but as a stranger. A stranger who had broken into my life, stolen my trust, and was now trying to sell me a version of himself that never existed. I stepped back toward the table, not to sit, but to stand across from him, our eyes locked. You keep saying it was a mistake, I said quietly, though my words carried across the cafe like a blade slicing through the hum. But it wasn't. It was a choice, a series of choices. Each one told me exactly who you were, and I listened. He shook his head violently, hands splayed on the table as if he could pin me there. No, you're wrong. I was lost. I was stupid. But I love you, Rose. That has never changed. Love. The word slipped out of me like a bitter laugh. You don't call someone you love boring. You don't trade them for cheap neon lights in a stranger's body. You don't come home, eat the food they ordered for you, and lie to their face. That isn't love, Lucas. That's convenience. That's cowardice. His face crumpled, this confidence that once defined him dissolving into raw panic. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve... You're right. My voice cut him off calm and steady. You don't deserve me. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the barista behind the counter paused mid-pour, her eyes flicking toward us. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You didn't lose me because she was prettier or younger or more exciting. You lost me because when you had the choice to protect us, you chose yourself. And that told me everything I needed to know. Tears spilled down his cheeks, his hands trembling against the wood grain of the table. Please, Rose, please don't leave me like this. I straightened my bag strap firm on my shoulder. I'm not leaving you. I already left. You just didn't notice until the silence got too loud. For a moment, he stared at me as if trying to memorize every word, every flicker of expression, desperate to carve it into memory. I took one last look at him. His eyes, once filled with smug charm, were now hollow. His posture, once arrogant, sagged under the weight of his choices. And then softly, firmly, I said the last words I would ever give him. I hope you find what you're looking for, Lucas. But my part in your story is over. His mouth opened, but no sound came, just a broken breath. I turned and walked away, my steps steady measured. The bell above the cafe door jingled once more as I stepped into the afternoon sun. I didn't look back. The air outside felt different, cleaner, sharper. I inhaled deeply, the weight of his shadow lifting with every stride down the street. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt utterly free. The sun was warm against my face as I left the cafe, the kind of golden light that made the city glow softer than usual. Each step down the sidewalk felt lighter, as if I'd been walking with chains around my ankles and had finally cut them loose. For weeks, my life had been defined by silence, the heavy, suffocating silence after betrayal, the calculated silence of ignoring his messages, the tense silence of waiting for him to show up. But now silence meant something different. It wasn't the absence of noise, it was the presence of peace. My studio apartment greeted me with its stark white walls and simple furnishings. No framed photos of fake smiles, no clothes that weren't mine in the closet, no half-used bottles of cologne lingering in the air. Just me. I dropped my bag by the desk and sank into the chair, gazing out the window at the city below. People hurried past with grocery bags, dogs on leashes, earbuds in their ears, each of them wrapped in their own story. For the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped inside mine. I made tea, not coffee. Coffee still reminded me of him, of matching mugs and morning rituals that now felt like stage props in a play that had closed. Tea was mine. The steam curled upward, carrying no ghosts with it. I curled up on the bed with my notebook flipping to a blank page, my handwriting stretched across it slowly, deliberately. Things I want to do. The list wasn't grand. It was simple. Visit the art museum. Start running again. Call my brother more often. Learn to cook something that takes longer than 30 minutes. None of it was about proving myself to anyone. It was about choosing myself. Later that week, Marina invited me to a small gathering at her apartment. For months, I'd avoided parties, embarrassed to be the woman left behind. But I went. I stood in her kitchen, surrounded by friends, laughing at stories, sipping wine, and realized something startling. I didn't feel like the broken half of a couple anymore. I felt whole. "God, you look different," Marina said, nudging me with a grin. Lighter, like someone who finally set down a weight they weren't meant to carry. I smiled, and this time it wasn't forced. Maybe I did. Nights alone no longer ached. They breathed. I filled them with long walks, with books, with the steady quiet of rediscovering myself. The ice that had covered the ocean of grief was melting, yes, but I wasn't drowning. I was learning to swim. One Saturday morning, I passed the park where Lucas and I used to sit on lazy afternoons. The bench was empty, bathed in sunlight. I paused, waiting for the pang, the rush of sadness. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt gratitude. That chapter was closed. The bench was just a bench again. Weeks later, my phone buzzed with a notification, a new number. I didn't read it. I blocked it instantly. My silence had become my shield, my final answer. Because the truth was clear now. Closure didn't come from his apology. It didn't come from watching him fall or hearing about his mistakes. Closure came the moment I decided I didn't need him anymore. That evening, I walked through the city, the streets alive with weekend energy. Music spilled from open bars. Laughter floated from sidewalk tables. Neon lights flickered against brick walls. For a moment, I felt the echo of Vegas in the chaos, but this time it didn't sting. I wasn't standing on the outside of someone else's excitement trying to measure up. I was part of my own life, my own rhythm. At an intersection, the light turned green and I stepped forward with the crowd. The night air was cool, fragrant with street food and summer blossoms. And I thought, I'm not walking away anymore. I'm walking toward the things I'd put off, toward mornings that belonged only to me, toward a future that wasn't defined by being someone's safe option or backup plan. Lucas's chapter was over. My story was still being written. I didn't look back, not once. And in that decision, in that silence, I found the quiet freedom I'd been searching for all along.